So I'm going to talk to you about space. We don't invest into SpaceX, we invest into everything else. So I'm going to give you an exposure to exactly how we think about this market. So first of all, a bit about myself and the manager. We're pioneers in the space market. We created the world's first ever space fund. We were backed by giant space companies like Airbus, SES, Telespazio, Teledyne, Surrey Satellites. We've launched the world's largest space accelerator program that operates, that's been in operation since 2017. And we've also got the UK-listed Seraphim Space Investment Trust, which is actually the world's only listed exposure to the space market. So we've become the most active investor in the space market in the world. Across all of our activities, we've got 136 space companies. We see between 150 and 200 new space companies every single month. That's more than 75% of the global deal flow, and provides us with an information asymmetry over the global market, which helps us make informed investment decisions. So our investment trust has a portfolio value of 216 million, net assets of 240 million. And you can see by the NAV per share and the share price here, we're enjoying a rather large discount at the moment that I'm hoping at the end of this presentation you'll consider is not an appropriate discount. So I'm going to talk about space in the next few slides and try and educate you on what's been going on in this market. And it starts with SpaceX. So with their reusable rockets, they've completely changed the launch market. A launch used to cost $86,000 a kilo. It's now down to $1,000 a kilo. But it's not just the cost of taking activity into space. It's also about the volume of activity. So last year, there was a rocket launch every 34 hours. At the same time as that revolution in the pricing of the launch market, we've had a revolution in the satellite industry. Satellites used to be the size of cars or buses. They're now the size of a fridge or a microwave or even a shoebox. And this is how the market's really developed and accelerated over the last handful of years. So rather than costing $500 million to $1 billion, they now cost a few $100,000 to a few $1 million. And that's game-changing. And this is how it's changing. We are launching more satellites than ever before. In fact, there's only been 18,000 satellites ever launched in the history of space. Half of those were launched since 2020. And estimates are that there's going to be hundreds of thousands of satellites in space over the next handful of years if we carry on at the pace that we're going at. And our world is going to be covered in satellites, creating a digital infrastructure in the sky. And that is really where we focus our investment. So we're still at the beginning of this journey, but it's going to be game-changing. Everybody already uses space on an everyday basis. I'm sure all of you found your way here today by looking at Google Maps, and you're going to go to a restaurant afterwards that's been selected and booked, and again, using GPS and the internet. So let me talk to you about our thesis for space. We break it down into three parts. Today, which is this digital infrastructure in space. So hundreds of thousands of small satellites that are collecting information about our planet in very high resolution. And because these satellites, there's so many of them, we're now collecting data about our Earth in real time or close to real time. We're also building new forms of communication, so you'll all be aware of Starlink. The fusion of this data set is really creating massive opportunities in virtually every market. Think about this as a GPS on steroids. So that's where we are today. This is really where we're focused as an investment firm, investing into the companies that are leading edge in creating new capabilities with this kind of technology. The next thing to happen in space is about building physical infrastructure in space. So SpaceX is again at the front of the queue. They've developed a new rocket called Starship. It takes 100 tons into space in a single launch. We believe that that's going to halve the cost of sending a kilo into space again, down to $500 per kilo. It's cheaper to send something into space than it is to send a loved one a present in Australia. So that's going to lead to building infrastructure in space. So this is things like cell towers, things like data centers, things like manufacturing. We're going to be entering a world where we're lifting dirty industries that are polluting our planet and taking them into space. There's also whole new areas like drug discovery. In the space, in the zero-gravity environment, every protein, every molecule behaves differently. And we believe that that is going to lead to a whole range of new discoveries, both around drugs, but also around new materials. So we're just starting to invest in this area, but it's early days. And then you've got the future of space. This is about the moon as a stepping stone for Mars, all of the technologies required for permanent habitation in space, space travel, things like extraction of resources, really super interesting areas, but we don't invest in any of this because there really isn't an end market at the moment. The government is the end market there. There will be giant end markets in those markets in the future, but we're not investing there right now because there's so much work to do in Space 2.0 and 3.0. This is where the opportunity lies. It's measured in trillions of dollars. The market today is worth about $500 billion a year, but it's estimated that over the course of the next decade, that's going to be worth trillions. So it's no surprise that SpaceX is the largest private company in the world, and we're looking to invest in all of the other SpaceXs that we believe are out there. So space tech, all of the companies in space tech are dual use. That means that they have a military application, but they also have commercial applications. And much the way that GPS is relevant to every single industry, so is the type of technology and data and communications that are being built by the new space areas that we invest into. They're going to disrupt every single market you can think of. And it took 30 years for GPS to really get to the stage of where it is today, used in every industry. It's completely revolutionized whole industries, like the taxi industry as an example. And we're just going to see this accelerate rapidly with the new forms of data that are now being made available from space. So everyone's aware of our geopolitical situation at the moment and the new president in the US and how that has led to a different relationship with Europe, a withdrawal from support of Europe, and the requirement for Europe to step up and really take care of its own defence needs. So there's been much discussion around this over the recent weeks during the course of the last month. EU governments got together and immediately agreed an $800 billion new fund in order to be able to address the shortfall from recent years in defence. And then individual countries like Germany themselves have had to change their fiscal rules in order to find a further 500 billion euros to invest in their own area. And every day of the week over the last few weeks, we've seen other countries like Sweden significantly increasing their own budget for defence by changing their borrowing rules and changing the remit of existing funds that they have at the moment. So why is this? And where does space sit in relation to defence? So historically, it's accounted for about 10% of the overall spend on defence. We believe that that's going to increase to more like 30 to 40% of these budgets that are available. And why is that? What does space provide? Well, it provides intelligence, security, reconnaissance, huge areas that are required and only can be done from space. Secure communications. So the first thing that happened when Russia invaded the Ukraine was they sabotaged the satellites that were providing the communication capability. This is where SpaceX came in with their Starlink and made the internet available. And then you've got navigation. Of course, GPS was designed for the military, used for the military, and is a core part of their requirements. So as a consequence of the war in Ukraine, warfare has completely changed. So cyber is one of the most important elements of warfare now, about jamming and spoofing. Commercial space has really stepped up. I talked about how Starlink has stepped up to provide internet capability to Ukraine during this crisis. It's enabled targeting, but it's enabled the military to continue to operate. But it's also enabled a really important area, which is a new face of warfare, which is drones. So without access to the internet and without access to GPS, drones simply don't work. So the new face of warfare is really delivered by space. And then we've got electronic warfare. So this is about sort of the GPS jamming and all of the activities that go on to try and obscure behavior on the ground. So warfare has changed. The position of space has stepped up. And the issue here is that the US has historically been the party that's invested in all of these areas, which has left Europe very exposed, in particular when it comes to ISR. The surveillance, the reconnaissance, the intelligence is the part that Europe no longer has as a consequence of US stepping away. So here's our portfolio. So the top 10 companies account for 76%. 7 of the top 10 companies are focused on defense. Defense accounts for 74% of NAV. Our companies are positioned in Europe. 62% of NAV is focused on Europe. So this portfolio is specifically focused on this giant opportunity that has just emerged in Europe, and there are only so many companies in the space market that money can be channeled into. I'm going to talk about 3 of them now. ICEYE, Deorbit, Allspace, our top 3 holdings, I'm now just going to briefly explain to you. So ICEYE is a Finnish company. We're one of the largest shareholders. I think we're the largest shareholder in this company, and let me describe what it does. It uses radars on miniaturized satellites. And what that enables them to be able to do is to look down from space at Earth in 50 centimeter resolution. That means that they can see millimeter movement. And what they're able to do is they're able to see that in day or night, and they can see through cloud and operate in any weather. With their current constellation of 40 satellites, they're able to see every square meter of Earth every single hour. They then use change detection algorithms, AI, to determine how that square meter of Earth has changed. And then they understand the history of that square meter of Earth over time. So you can see the obvious applications for defense with this capability. So this is a company that's growing very rapidly. It's profitable, and it really is probably the best positioned company in Europe to provide the data and intelligence that Europe requires that is now lacking as a consequence of the withdrawal of the support from the US. So this is a UK company based in Reading called Allspace. And what they've developed is a unique antenna. And what this antenna does is it allows any moving vehicle or boat or plane or tank to connect to more than one satellite in more than one orbit. So currently, these antennas will only connect to a single satellite, and it's only the satellite that it's a part of the network that it can connect to. So it can't make use of all of the other capability that's available and the growing amount commercially. So this company enables the ability to be able to connect to any satellite. But what it also enables is by doing reverse triangulation, by connecting to these at least 3 satellites, they can actually work out where the antenna is on the ground to enable a centimeter accurate navigation in GPS-denied environments. So this is exactly what you need for anything that's autonomous. You need to be able to connect to the internet. You need to be able to understand exactly where you are with centimeter accuracy. So this is a massive new capability. So this company has got giant customers in the US with the Army and Navy, likewise here in the UK, and has commercial customers as well. So that's our second largest company. Our third largest company, Deorbit Italium. And what they do requires a little bit of explanation, so please bear with me. So what these guys are is and you can see a picture of their vehicle there. And what it's called is effectively a space taxi called Ion. And what they do is they sell space on this taxi to up to 12 satellites. So these 12 satellites get packed into this taxi, and then this taxi goes inside a SpaceX. SpaceX is the cheapest way to get into orbit and the most regular way to get into orbit. Think about it as a bus. SpaceX takes you to wherever SpaceX wants to drop you off, and out everybody gets. So what happens when they're then released in space is they turn on their engines of their taxi, and then they go around the orbit, and they deliver their customers wherever they want to go to in their particular orbits. Because all of these customers have got specific constellations, and when they're replacing satellites, they need them to go to specific places. So it's just like a taxi dropping off its customers. So that's not the interesting part of this business. The interesting part of the business is what happens next. It's an empty vehicle with propulsion, and it then has a second life, effectively like an RAC van. So these are empty vehicles in space waiting for a call. So they can go and grab a broken satellite, push it towards Earth where it burns up in the atmosphere, go and grab a new satellite and drag it into the position that's required. So this kind of infrastructure in space is absolutely needed, and this is the global market leader. But from a defense perspective, there are two things that defense are looking to use this capability for. One is to put 12 satellites in there, launch it into space, and just leave them in there quietly. So in the event that an aggressor was to take out satellites of a particular nation, they just then quickly release the new ones into the space environment, and they're immediately able to replace their satellites. The other thing that is even more amazing is they also look to use this to put packages in there that they want to send back to Earth. So think about it as medicine or money or armaments in like a case that can be actually sent to anywhere in Earth in 40 minutes. So this enables you to be able to sort of propel objects back into Earth and actually identify exactly where you want them to go and do that with less than an hour. So there are huge capabilities that are being enabled here from space, and there are three examples of our portfolio companies, the largest portfolio companies within our portfolio, that are beautifully positioned with this giant sum of money that is now being made available, and they're addressing the exact requirements that the governments require, because our friends from the US are not quite so friendly with us anymore. So here's a review. So space was already growing very quickly. And again, just to refer back to the presentation previously, SpaceX is their largest holding. There's a good reason for that. So the market grew by 25% last year. We believe that because of the changes in dynamics from a geopolitical basis, that this market is going to go through another revolution. We believe that we are very well positioned in order to be able to support and provide the requirements of the different militaries in Europe, but we also will continue to invest internationally, support US investments, and even the Asian market. So hopefully, after listening to my presentation, you'll agree with me as to why I cannot understand why we're sat on a 50% discount to our NAV. It simply doesn't make sense to me. I'm not prepared to buy back shares because I can invest the money that we've got far better in the companies in our portfolio and in new companies that are providing the capability in this market to access that immediate funding that's available now and for the next 10 years. So thank you very much for your attention.